We'll make a start then. Thank you for those of you joining this session. It's not a PowerPoint session, just put this up to help us start the day. And so, yeah, I think those of you that's been here for the other sessions think it's been lots of great sessions, lots of great discussions today. And hopefully now we've got another good discussion coming up on Dads Do NICU. Hope some of you've got a coffee as well, because hopefully there'll be lots of talking and discussion amongst ourselves. And if you've just seen, we will be recording the session, but we'll just record those of us that are speaking at the start, and then obviously we'll stop the recording those, hopefully to encourage more of an open discussion. So if I just introduce myself, my name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm one of the trustees for the Smallest Things and Dad to Premature Boys. So we're joined in this session by Phil and Carl. So Carl is the dad to twin boys, born 13 weeks premature, and you might have known him from his blog at PremDad. So welcome, Carl.
Thank you very much.
And also we've got with us is Phil. Phil's organisation is also one of our employers with Hearts. He supports our charity, but also his dad to Theo, who was born at 25 weeks. And I know, Phil, you've done some fundraising and other things in the past about your NICU journey. So welcome and thanks for joining us today, Phil.
No problem, thanks for having me.
So today's session, we'll just put one slide together to hopefully set a bit of context for us all. We all know that fathers will face their own unique challenges following the premature birth of a baby, challenges around work and childcare, and what to do during that stay at NICU, but then also in terms of the ongoing support and the ongoing challenges that come with having a premature child, as to what that looks like. So we've done our Dads Do NICU series, and we've invited fathers to share their stories to try and encourage more people to talk about what the challenges they faced or how they've overcome those, and what have they done, what have they learned from that. So what we're just going to do in this session basically is Carl's going to talk a little bit about his story and what he's done. Then I'll do the same myself, and then Phil will do that as well. But then at the end, hopefully we'll just get a bit of a discussion. And I've just put these 3 questions together to sort of hopefully we can all think about while we listen to the respective speakers and then have a bit of discussion. Is how can we encourage more fathers to share their experiences and share their stories? Is there any specific resources that could help fathers? You'll know, as the Smallest Things, we always look to try and achieve tangible actions. We've got our Employer with Heart scheme to help with additional leave. We have now the Premature Award to help in schools. So is there specific resources or other things that could assist fathers in this space? And understand also, are there any specific barriers that fathers face, that is the challenge to them that could be done about? So they're just sort of 3 general questions to hopefully sort of add a bit of context and structure to our discussions. But I'll stop sharing the slides, and I'll hand over to Carl to talk about his experiences and journey with a premature child. So over to yourself, Carl.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, just to introduce myself, my name's Carl MacDonald, and up until about 2019, I was pretty much in the dark about prematurity and sort of impact it can have on anyone, and that was until my twin sons were born at 27 weeks and 4 days, so just under 13 weeks prematurely. It was completely unexpected, and there were no sort of warning signs that it might happen. We obviously knew that twins might come a little bit early, but I personally didn't really understand just how early that could be. My wife just went into spontaneous labour, and within it was about 4 or 5 hours, we had 2 tiny little boys fighting for their lives. So it was quite a scary time of my life, well, the scariest time of my life. I was really confused. I didn't know what was happening. I could only assume that we were probably going to lose one or both of the boys. So yeah, from that moment on, really, it was a bit of a blur. It was the boys were blue lighted to a hospital about an hour away from where we live, so we kind of followed, and we had 2 weeks there, sort of away from our home, and kind of away from the people close to us and just kind of going through this traumatic experience on our own for much of the time. And then we were moved back to Scunthorpe, where we live, and they were in hospital for a further 7 weeks. Throughout that time, they sort of battled through various illnesses and infections, and obviously, as I said, it was quite a difficult and traumatic time anyway. But there were sort of things going on around us that, you know, sort of added to the emotional stress. So, for example, I think they were 2 days old when one of my sons had a brain scan, and it was found that he had quite a severe brain bleed, and we were told that, you know, this might affect him for the rest of his life. He might not be able to walk and talk properly. He might suffer from cerebral palsy. So it was really tough to take. You know, I'd waited all this time and was really looking forward to becoming a dad, and the whole twins thing was a bit of a novelty, and then it was suddenly kind of snatched away from us, and we were sort of plunged into this dark place, really, a bit of an alien world. So yeah, it was kind of a horrible experience, really. And I think that the biggest thing for me was the sort of emotional trauma that I had to go through, but at the same time I felt that I had to be the strong one in the family, and that I had to be there for my wife, whilst also trying to bond with two little tiny babies as well, who were fighting for their lives. So for me, it was just kind of being pulled in various different directions and not really knowing what was the right thing to do. Like I said, I had no real knowledge of the NICU or of prematurity before it all happened to me. So yeah, since then I've kind of resolved to try and change that a little bit, and try and share the sort of point of view of a dad going through that situation. A lot of the information out there is directed towards mums and from the mum's perspective, which is completely understandable, of course, and I wouldn't want to change that, but I'd just like to see more of a voice for the dads who also go through something that's really traumatic as well. So yeah, last year I set up a blog where I kind of just share parts of the story and our kind of journey, and try and share resources and sort of tips and advice for people who are going through that situation now and in the future. And it's been doing quite well. So I've spoken to quite a few people who've emailed and said, you know, thanks for writing about this. We don't hear from many dads on this subject, and it's really helpful for us going through this journey now. So yeah, it's still quite hard to write about. It's still quite difficult to talk about, to be honest. So the boys are coming up to about 2 years and 10 months old now. Pleased to report they're both doing well. So some of the initial scares have kind of, we've kind of got lucky, I think, in many ways. But yeah, they've been discharged from the follow-up appointments now, and sort of progressing as they should be in line with their age. So yeah, it's for us, it's been a happy outcome, or a positive outcome in the end, but it's still something that we think about and talk about pretty much every day. And I think, yeah, just looking at the boys running around now and starting to talk and be cheeky back to us and stuff, it's kind of yeah, a little bit of a reminder of just how far they've come, really.
Thanks for sharing with us, Carl. No, it can be difficult to share that story, so you know, thank you for sharing from your perspective. If I'll share you with my own story before I hand over to Phil. So 6 years ago, we had our twin boys, Sam and Harry. Was born at 25 weeks gestation. We live in between Birmingham and Dudley in the West Midlands, and we was transferred quickly across to Coventry. Just going to need to be in the specialist unit. It's all a bit of a blur. You don't really know what's going on. And similar to Carl there, within a few hours of being in the hospital, we had twin boys. You know, Sam was £1.12, Harry was £1.10, or as I like to put it, that's 3/4 of a bag of sugar. Which, when you're doing the food shopping, it's quite some context to it all, isn't it? And you can't really comprehend when you're seeing how tiny they are in those incubators, what would be going on, and what you're in for, and what that stay would be like. As any little one born at that age, there's, you know, a range of challenges and medical problems. And again, similar to what Carl just said, Sam had some significant bleeds on the brain, and it was just trouble stabilizing him. And sadly, he passed away when he was 16 days old, sort of thing. And trying to, you know, what's the right thing to do? You're dealing with that trauma, need to support my wife. We've also got Harry was still in hospital. We'd also, at that point, our daughter was 3. And got this picture of my daughter holding Sam's hand the morning that he passed away, which we still look at now, because at that point we was just called in, and it's just those memories. And it was 6 years ago, but it could have been this morning. The memories are still there. Harry had lots of challenges after that. He with as it was with his breathing and his vision. But we ended up having 107 days in hospital. And after, across a couple of different hospitals, and before he came home on oxygen for a while. But he's now a thriving 6-year-old, absolutely full of it. He loves running. He loves playing with his friends. And apart from regular checkups on his eyes, he's now been, he's discharged from the vast array of clinics that he had. So I think from my end of sort of trying to deal with that, it was 6 years ago, but still feel it's very much something which we live and experience all the time still. And we had a time frame of what should I be doing? I think I always think at the time we described it as we wanted to make Sam's funeral really, really powerful, really good event, purely because we felt it was the only party we'd ever get to hold for him. And we've since gone on and we've done a couple of family fun days and fundraising events, which we say is in his name, as a chance to sort of, his legacy. And why I get involved in the smallest things is feel that I'm doing it for my boy. So his voice is there. And I know it can be a difficult topic to talk about. I would have no idea about this until it happened to us. Friends and family wouldn't have any idea about what happened to us. And I think from the dad's perspective, it's knowing what is the right place to be, because your instinct is to be there for your wife, for your partner, and also to you want to look after your boys, and for a long time I still do feel like we failed Sam because we wasn't able to protect him, and that is there. So it can be a real difficult experience, but one I think is it's great talking to others about it, that you sort of like, and even just now some of the things Carl was saying, it's like, well, that's a similar thing. It wasn't just you, and there is others out there that can do that. So it can be, quite experienced. But like I said, Harry's now a thriving little lad, and he's doing really well. And hopefully, and these events and other things getting involved with is our way of sort of remembering Sam as part of that as well. So that's sort of a bit about my story and what happened to ourselves. So I'll hand over to Phil to talk about his experience.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I suppose we go back at our battle, myself and my wife Lisa. Our battle started predominantly with fertility treatment. So we struggled to have a child in the first place. We got one, Jack, in 2006, and he was our miracle baby, and normal birth, and everything was fine with him. We continued then with fertility treatment for many years after that to try and get another one. We decided in 2014 that actually, the doctors told us we was wasting our money, and the likelihood of us having another child was very slim. So we stopped. And then 3 years later, completely out of nowhere, we caught pregnant naturally, and we was so excited about having another child. Everything was going great, and then at 25 weeks, Lisa had a bleed. We went to St Mary's Hospital, which was the hospital that was registered at in Manchester anyway. So we went there on the Friday. She was in labour for the whole weekend. We wasn't able to get a scan because they don't scan on a weekend, which was just ridiculous. But we went down on the Monday morning for a scan, and when we got down there, he'd funneled his way out, so he'd sort of worked his way from the inside out, and there was 0.5 mil left on the cervix. So, you know, no steroids, no magnesium, straight into the delivery suite, and out he came. And thankfully, he came out in his bag. You know, the nurse caught him in his hands, and off he went to the table. And you can imagine we was just in complete, you know, disarray in terms of what was going on. We didn't know anything. It was a complete shock. And you know, they did what they had to do. They incubated him and then showed him to us, and off he went to the NICU. Thankfully, we was at the hospital where the best, or one of the best NICUs is. So so he went off to that. It was a good 3 hours before we got to see him, and obviously thoughts going through both of our minds in terms of, you know, if it is it going to survive. You know, one of the consultants came in just before he was born and said, you know, we're really sorry, we're going to do everything we can. And I think my question to her was, is he going to live? And she just said, we're going to do everything that we can. So that period, that wait to go and see him was immense. And then when we finally did see him, he was obviously hooked up to all of these machines and beeps going off everywhere, and there was just complete chaos in the room in terms of, you know, there's another 7 or 8 babies in there, nurses everywhere, and it was just surreal. So I think that first couple of days we were just in a bit of a bubble, really, just in our own thoughts and not really talking, but pure panic. And then we started to think about the logistics. You know, what are we going to do? How are we going to be here? My wife Lisa, she's a nurse, so obviously she went straight into nurse mode, wanted to look after him. So we had issues in terms of we needed to find somewhere to stay, because we lived a good 40-minute drive away. You know, I started to look for a flat straight away. I was on Google trying to find a flat close by, and fortunately we was able to get a room in Ronald MacDonald House, which was next door. So that was a massive weight off our shoulder. I was in a lucky position where I had my own business and I had a senior leadership team in place. So I was able to let go of my business and leave that in the hands of that team. You know, so on reflection, we look back at the logistics in terms of what if I would have relied on that salary? You know, what if I would have relied on having to go to work and earn that salary to be able to sustain our lives, sustain the house, sustain our 11-year-old, and, you know, and all of that sort of stuff. Had we not have had that ability to do that, I mean, there was a lot of parents in the room who were not there for the child. We sort of spent, well, Lisa in particular spent 18 to 20 hours a day on that NICU ward. She was at his side constantly, and I tried to spend as much time as I could, probably 12, 14 hours a day in there, aside from sorting out our 11-year-old and you know, getting into school and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, we was constantly in that ward, and we became his voice. You know, we realised that we had to be his voice because he didn't have one. But it's very different to a children's ward where your child goes onto children's ward and you're expected to look after your child. This was a child being taken away from you and being looked after by NICU nurses who, you know, were doing what they needed to do for the child, and you very much wasn't involved in that. And we really forced ourselves upon that care. We tried to do as much as we could. We tried to be involved as much as we could, and we tried to make sure that Theo knew who we were and we knew who he were, because at the end of that process, when he came out after 123 days, we knew everything that we needed to know about Theo and how to care for him going forward. Whereas a lot of parents who weren't in that situation, who did have to travel a long way and who couldn't be at the bedside and couldn't be involved in the care of the child, didn't have that. So they were given a child at the end of that process and said, there you go, take your child home and look after him. And a lot of them didn't know what they were doing and didn't have really a support mechanism in place to do that. So I know Lisa in particular, she's gone on a bit of a mission to try and change that, and you know, that's where you guys have come in really in terms of supporting families at those early stages, and you know, and also after that period as well, putting the employer with a heart in place so that employers, you know, will allow the staff that time off to be able to go and be with the child and care for the child and not have to worry about taking a salary home or work or losing the job or anything like that. So, you know, the charity Smallest Things is really close to our hearts in terms of that. And we didn't need to pull on the charity ourselves in our circumstance, but we know that a very, very high percentage of parents in that situation do. So, you know, you've got that experience in the hospital, but then when you come home, you've then got to look after a child who, in our case, has got significant problems. You know, he's had a bleed on his brain, he's deaf, he's got chronic lung disease, you know, and he's now got an educational healthcare plan. He's 4 years old, he's just started school, and he's going to have to have a lot of support through his life to give him the best opportunities. And it's charities like yourselves that are there as a mechanism for parents to be able to lean on and pull on, and things like this, you know, with parents talking about the stories and talking to each other is great, because, you know, as Carl said, didn't know anything about prematurity. I'd never even heard of it really before, you know, other than passing comments. I even had a family member who'd had 2 premature children before ours, and I still didn't really know much about it because, you know, I didn't get involved in it. So it was very, very new to us, and quite a traumatic period. But I think, you know, it changes you. And, you know, there's a great saying out there about having a premature baby changes you for life, and it's true. It does. It gives you a completely different perspective. You know, we're lucky enough that, you know, we got to take him home after 123 days, you know, and he's going to have a good life. Aside from all the issues he's got, he will have a good life, and he will, you know, we will get all of the opportunities that we can give him. But, you know, it's without charities like yourselves, a lot of parents will really struggle, certainly in those early days, and then beyond when they take the child home without that network behind them. So that's obviously why I'm supporting the Smallest Things, and you've become one of our corporate charities, you know, and we'll continue to support you guys going forward.
Thanks, Phil. Really interesting listening to you there, and I love the phrase you said there. I've certainly resonate with, you know, it changes you for life, doesn't it? The experiences that change your life. And also like the bit you talked about that you started looking for a flat, and that really resonated with me, because I felt that dad role in there was to, like, I need to do something, so I'll try and do something practical, like, you know, look for somewhere to start, you know, what can I do here, isn't it? It seems like you feel a bit.
Well, it is because the mother is the carer, you know, and she was a nurse, and she's a nurse anyway, my wife. So of course she was going to always take that role, and I felt completely out of control. You know, I did. I felt a complete lack of control of the situation. I wasn't able to do anything or help in any way. You know, so you have to try and find something to do, otherwise you just go insane. You know, so it was about, you know, the logistics. How am I going to make this journey, because we were told straight away, you know, you're going to be here for several months. That was told to us within a day or two, like that this is going to be a long journey, you know. And it was that really which triggered me to say, okay, well, how can I make this journey less painful for us? So
I remember myself, something when we was told Sam had bleeds on the brain, and he was quite high, like he, you know, would end up with some degrees of cerebral palsy, but you don't know at that time. I remember sat next to the bed, and I just got a scrap of paper, and I was drawing how we'd convert our house to have a wheelchair access in it. I just didn't know what to do. So I just felt I needed to be somewhat practical as to, like, well, how could we deal with that? What I didn't even know that would happen. We didn't then do that, but you see your mind, you start to sort of, I need something tangible to do. And so I could see, you know, certainly resonate with how you describe that.
I mean, I think it's been particularly tough throughout the pandemic as well, because with the you know, them telling that they could only have one parent in there as well, and ultimately that's left the father completely out of the loop. You know, in terms of that, they may well have gone in for an hour here and there, but actually, you know, their involvement in that has been a lot less, because the mother will always take the priority of going in to see the child. So, you know, I think during this pandemic, it's been particularly hard for dads going through that process. And, you know, I'm in a couple of groups on Facebook with dads who have said that, you know, they've just been completely alienated from the whole process and have been completely out of control, and it's been tough.
Yeah, they must be. Yeah, the journey's difficult enough. I couldn't imagine having done it through the pandemic. So say if anyone's got questions, comments, ideas, feel free to put anything in the chat. We'll be chatting for the next 10-15 minutes or so with our ideas. Carl, with your blog, you said people sort of get in touch with you. I assume that's quite a lot of dads in there as well. Do you get any, is there common things people say or people ask, or bits from what you're sharing that they go, yes, that was really helpful?
I think, to be honest, it's actually a mix of dads and mums, really. I think, some mums get in touch and say they've sent it to the partners and that kind of thing because they know that they need help, but typical man fashion, they don't want to admit it, or they won't accept it, which was definitely what I was like as well. The typical feedback that I get is that it's just like a bit of a source of reassurance, and just having someone's story who's been through that process is really helpful for other people, knowing that it is hard and it's recognized that it's hard, but you can get through it. One of the more popular ones I did was around like bonding with your baby. So I think like one of the most difficult things for me was that it was kind of hard to make a connection with my sons, because I saw them for a few seconds and then they were in incubators for weeks, and it was really hard to try and build any kind of rapport with them, I suppose. So I kind of just shared some of the things that I did that helped me make that connection. So things like having kangaroo care, getting involved in like the care routines where possible, and doing the tube feeds and that kind of thing. I kind of like made an article around that, and just wanted to give people some ideas on how they could help out around their child and try and build up that relationship, because it is a hard thing to do, like to try and be a parent through 2 little holes in an incubator is a really difficult thing to do. So I just wanted to kind of share some of the things that worked for me, and that was one that was really quite popular, so it's good.
I suppose sometimes dads might be a bit more, I like saying, I remember changing a nappy through. It's hard enough at any time, isn't it? You're trying to figure it out, and then such a tiny baby, and your hand's almost bigger than the child, and you're trying to figure it out. But it's so glad you did it, because it's part of that bonding process, isn't it?
Definitely. I was absolutely petrified when I was told that I could actually touch them. I thought that the skin almost looked see-through, and I thought if I touch them I'm going to break them. And like you say, with the nappy thing, I'd never changed a nappy in my life anyway, so I was kind of envisaging it in my head, and it was completely different. It was like a different angle and all these wires in the way. I used to say it was like disarming a bomb or something like that. It actually felt like it was that tense a situation. You didn't want to hurt them and set the machines off and stuff. So it's just those little things that you don't really think about, but they're really important in kind of building that relationship.
It is. It's almost like, because you almost feel bad sometimes for asking about, say, having that skin to skin time or because it could take a long time to enable but to come out of incubator, because of everything that they're connected to. And I suppose, especially, I know I did was more like, my wife was the priority for that time, sort of thing. And sometimes you feel like you shouldn't ask, because it's such a can be not hassle, but it's a lot of work, isn't it? But I think, like you say, it's good to share. I say sharing that actually did that and it was good, encourages others to do it, because there is a benefit.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, it's just about, I mean, for me, the biggest frustration was that there wasn't really much out there in terms of dads who'd been in that position. So I just thought, well, why don't I be that person then? It's kind of like I say, it's been good to hear from other people and hear that like the words that I'm writing have been helpful. Do you get any sort of, do we think there's dads get in touch or say anything specifically about their own mental health or well-being or sort of trauma themselves? Do you think that's is that, we've all talked about our journey, but do you think that's a challenge out there that more people sharing might help as well? I think so. I think initially we had access to some counselling, which really helped, but then when we moved back to our local hospital, we kind of lost that. So I think, for many people who sort of don't get access to that kind of thing, it's just a thing where you bottle your emotions up. And I think for me, actually, it was more when we got the boys home that it kind of really started to hit me, and that's when my mental health suffered the most, I think, because it was almost like PTSD, really, I suppose. I've just seen a comment there from Katrina where she said that her husband said it took him longer to feel like a father. For me, I felt like the whole time we were in a hospital, I was almost like a bystander. And then when we brought the boys home, it was like they'd been born again almost. And that was when we learned to become parents. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have that experience really, because we was quite lucky that at Manchester they were just introducing this parent integrated care, and we was quite vocal in what we wanted to do. So we forced a bond between us and Theo. You know, we got involved in everything that we could. You know, it was tough at times to try and change the mindset of some of the NICU nurses in terms of they were coming to do a job, you know, and they wanted to do their job, and you know, and that was that. And you know, we were, like you say, bystanders in that. We had to break those walls down. We had to force our way through that. So when we took Theo home, it wasn't so much as, oh, we start again and this is us caring for the child. It was a case of, thank God we can do it on our own now and let's just crack on. We'd already developed a really strong bond with him, you know, from very, very early. As soon as we could touch him, it was probably about two or 3 weeks before we could actually hold him. But we'd already developed, both of us, quite a strong bond with him. So when we took him home, we knew him, we knew everything about him, we knew everything that he needed. We knew, you know, if he was reacting in a certain way, we knew why that was. So there was no shock for us when we took him home, whereas there is for a lot of parents, because, as you say, they are treated like bystanders, and the nurses have just got to do their job and care for that child, which is fine. That's what they're there to do. But we almost had to force our way into being able to do that, you know. And I have shouted from the rooftops about mothers and fathers doing that when they get there, because it is a really important thing. You know, if you are a bystander in that process, then you will struggle when you get the child home, and it will hit you. PTSD will come in, and you know, that stress, and that you'll be out of control again because you don't know what you're doing. So, you know, it's really important that you advocate for your child, and that you get involved as much as you physically can in caring for your child, so that you don't have that situation when you do finally take them home. And you know, we can shout that, because we didn't have that situation when we took him home. You know, we knew everything about him, and we was able to give him the same care as what he was having in the hospital at home. So that's a really important factor in that process, and something that I tell any premature parent that I talk to. I tell them to make sure that they force that bond with the child, and that they push forward to be able to care as much as they can for that child while they're in NICU.
It's really interesting point, Phil. You're right about getting involved, because I remember that experience. I remember, you know, the day Harry came home, you know, coming home after such a long stay in hospital, and the preparation that had gone in. You know, the house was full of oxygen tanks, and I was constantly turning them on and off to make sure they'd be working. And I kept putting it to my eyes just so I could feel the draft of it, and constantly doing that thing and making sure everything was ready. And it just, you know, you have that natural instinct. You do it, all your kids, don't you, to protect them. But it's almost sort of like when someone's coming home so small, so fragile, and having been through so much, I think your protection sort of instinct just goes to another level, doesn't it? And you're right, I think you do. And I think because you get so many professionals are involved, and I think sometimes they, you know, they're sort of, they, even as the dad saying, oh, I think, what about this? They're like, not necessarily, you know, not saying they won't listen, but sort of like thinking, could take more heed of that, because you're the one there that's been there every minute of every day, and obviously seeing the whole perspective, not just the certain issues that they may be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was nobody in that NICU ward who knew Theo better than what we did. You know, and it was almost like when a new nurse came on, it was almost us saying, this is who Theo is, and this is what he does, and you know, if he's doing that, that's because of this, and if he's doing that, that's because of this. And we were almost able to do the handovers between the nurses, because we knew absolutely everything about him. So, and we made sure we was there at all of the handovers to make sure that it was a full handover as well, and that they were getting the information. So, but we were very lucky. I was able to leave my business in the hands of somebody else. Lisa wasn't working anyway. She was on maternity leave, obviously. So, we was very lucky to be able to be there. But we know full well that a lot of parents, and a high percentage of parents, are not able to do that and have to rely on the care in the NICU, and then have that problem when they get home.
Yeah, no, relationships we forged in that time, whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing. My employer was very flexible. I ended up just taking time off sick for some time, but I know other dads that I met there wasn't in that position because their employment rights wasn't as good for sick pay, and was able to be there less and was going through similar traumatic experiences. So sort of going through it, but then also not being able to be there is a whole other different type of trauma, isn't it?
Yeah,
to be
absolutely.
able to support as well. I mean, do you think there was anything specific that was really good, either on that, in the NICU state, or that you've encountered since, either of you, Carl or Phil, about that sort of helped things from your perspective?
In what sense, sorry?
Well, was there anything that they specifically did in the unit to help you as the dad, or any of the other services you've engaged with since, that was sort of, was specifically thinking about you as the dad? Or
I mean, they had a dad's group, but it wasn't well established, and obviously because you're in that environment, people you'll swap stories in passing in conversation, but there wasn't any specific. I mean, there was a counsellor that sort of you could speak to, and Jack spoke to them and Lisa spoke to them, but I would just grab a coffee with another dad and have a quick chat. But in all honesty, I didn't see very many dads in the NICU when I was there, so there wasn't that many there. It was predominantly mums that were there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. What, anything from your perspective, Carl?
No, I think for me it was the nurses were actually really good with me in terms of making sure that I was able to get involved in those care routines and that kind of thing, and trying to make sure that I was involved. I guess that it might have been a little bit different because we had twins, so there was probably the fact that they both needed the nappies changing and they both needed feeding probably meant that it worked quite well with there being two of us and two babies. I suppose maybe I'd have felt a little bit more cast aside if we only had the one. For me, I didn't really talk about the experience in the hospital. I'm quite a shy person, normally speaking, and particularly during that time, I think I got quite a lot of anxiety, and I just didn't want to talk to anyone really about what I was going through. So it was really difficult for me to kind of open up about it. So that probably didn't help me at all, really, which is, I guess, is another reason why I'm talking about it more now. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing for me was just making the nurses making sure that I wasn't kind of forgotten about as much as maybe other dads' experience.
Do you think that it would have helped at the time to share more?
Yeah, I think so, probably. Like I say, I just kind of felt like I had to just get on with it and be the strong one, even though it was like really hard and I was trying to hide it. But looking back, I think if I'd have talked about it more and maybe even spoke to my friends a little bit more who probably didn't understand exactly what I was going through, it might have just helped me sort of be able to offload a little bit and I guess get more people to understand what we were going through.
Yeah.
So I think in those early days in the hospital, you just kind of go into your bubble, don't you? And you don't speak to anybody. I know Lisa turned her phone off. She didn't even answer text messages or anything for months and months. She completely shut herself off from the world. And I suppose I did really. I'd go to my office to check up, and they'd all be asking questions about what was going on, and I didn't want to talk about it. I was there to look at work, and I just want to leave that behind for a minute and let's just concentrate on what I'm looking at and then go back. So you kind of shut yourself off from that communication, just go into that survival mode and let's get through this. And I think it's afterwards when you come home and then you start to talk to people, you start to talk to your friends again, and go out and open yourself up. It's that when it starts to hit home, I think, in terms of what you've just been through. I think at that in the moment, you're in the moment, and therefore you're not going through anything other than what you're doing right now with your child. But afterwards, when you're on reflection, you start to realise actually that was a pretty traumatic experience, and I need to talk about that to put my mind straight.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you share that story, and you can tell from people's reaction that they're like, "Whoa!" And you probably, because you've been living and breathing every second of it, you've probably just boxed it away and not realised sort of some of that thing. And I mean, I remember being some messages from some friends saying, "I'm sorry, I've not been in touch. I just don't know what to say to you."
Yeah.
And other people would be in touch and sort of like not carrying on as if nothing had happened, but sort of just chatting away. So then, because you just, you're spending long hours, and at times it's just nothing to do. So just flicking through on your phone at the time, something you do. So just having a conversation with someone like to me about the football or something else that's just something different was actually supportive, because it was providing you a focus of something to do, and just like there was a world, because you're in this, it's like you move into that bubble, don't you?
Yeah.
And every time they come to check sats or check everything, it's sort of like, because it's every hour you're checking for something different, aren't you? And it just becomes all consuming. But I think at the same time, there's a lot of people say, I just didn't know what to say to you, so I didn't say anything. And when I actually got to speak to me, and I said, doesn't matter, just say something, because I haven't got a script as to what would have been right for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So maybe hopefully that is something off the back of this conversation and the work that's been happening, is that we're able to probably really try and pull together as many of those stories to try and those sort of little tips for dads that we can get into units to be saying, do get involved. And we all know there'll be a dad in a hospital today just about to start the experience that we've gone through. And I suppose being able to sort of say to them that you're probably not going to want to open and share your story, but here's some from other people that have. So just read those through a dad's lens and a dad's perspective, would give you something else to think about. And there's a lot, I remember you said a few minutes ago, Phil, and we had the same, that within day one we was told you're going to be here for a long time. I remember a consultant saying to me, the due date for a reason, so use that as your guide. And so that was like the 5th of October, and the due date was the 20th of January. So you're like, it's like your world's just completely changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overnight. So I think whether we can try and pull these stories together to try and get them into units to help dads that are starting out on that journey.
It's them having a library, isn't it? Because you'd be hard to find a dad who goes into that experience knowing what premature babies are all about, or what prematurity is all about. Because there's 3 of us on here who didn't have a clue what prematurity was. So to have that library, and to be able to I mean, I went straight onto Google looking at prematurity, and it wasn't pretty reading, and I'm sure you guys did exactly the same. It was all like, you're looking at the chances of survival and all that sort of stuff. Whereas actually, if we've got some forums and some success stories and some dad perspective stories out there, what people can access, and they can be given that, as directly from the hospitals at that time, to say, look, here's some parent stories, have a look at some blogs, have a look at some diaries or whatever it might be. I would have looked at them without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm sure you guys would have looked at them at that point in time, just to see what the reality of it was, because I didn't know what it was. All I had was my thoughts of what it potentially could be based on some Google stories.
That's probably one of the things to add in that. So if between us we did like these the top 5 things for dad to do once they start that journey, I'd probably certainly have on there, don't Google.
Don't Google, absolutely,
Google.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know what that could tell you. But it sounds like some of the resources you started to put out there, Carl, are really getting some traction and can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I say, I just want to share my experience, but also make sure that I can pass on any sort of.
Have you got those links? Have you got those links into the hospitals, Carl? Have you started to approach the NICUs and ask them to put the resources on their notice boards and stuff?
I haven't directly, but I have had quite a few sort of NICU staff who've kind of messaged me on Twitter and said, can we share this with the dads in the unit? We think it'd be really helpful, which is obviously really nice. And the more that happens, the better, I suppose. Yeah,
I think just contact the NICUs and just say, look, this is my resource, put it out, they'll stick it on the notice board, you know, they will, because they are, you know, this parent integrated care is becoming a bigger thing now, and it's spreading out across more hospitals. So, you know, they want people to be informed, you know, because the nurses and consultants are too busy trying to save your child. They haven't got time to tell you what the journey is going to be like. You know, so other than you know, bullet points. So yeah, I'm sure, you know, they would accept those links.
Excellent.
Yeah, be really good way. Conscious time is getting on, so thank you, Carl and Phil, for joining this discussion. I think we've had a really good conversation. Nice to, you know, talk to you both about it and share that with others, and had some lovely comments coming in from everyone else as well. So hopefully we can use this as a platform to really try and encourage more awareness and drive the dads to NICU. So thank you all so much for joining this session. Did you want to wrap up, Katrina?
Thank you, Matt, and well, thank you to the three of you. I was just reflecting there how powerful it is to hear the father's voice, and Sarah hasn't got her hand up, she's clapping again. It truly is really really powerful to hear you speak and to hear your words, and has made me reflect more about our own charity and the work we do. And we're very proud of our Dads Do NICU platform on our website, and all we try and do to raise and promote the voices of fathers. But I'm really conscious we need to do much more to support fathers, and to raise awareness, and also to put dads together as well. I think that's really important, so thank you. I have just seen on Twitter that at PMQs today, Boris Johnson has said he is going to do everything possible, I think, to bring forward neonatal leave and pay, and that may not now be included in the employment bill, which is one of the stumbling blocks. So neonatal leave and pay, everybody's just looking at their phones now. See, to what's said. So one of the big stumbling blocks as to why it was going to take so long to come in is because it was wrapped up in a larger, wider employment bill. So he's going to look at other ways, perhaps, to bring it in sooner. That could be great news, but then we have had lots of promises from the government before. So watch this space, but we certainly will be keeping up that pressure on the government to introduce that as soon as possible. I just want to take this opportunity again to thank everybody who's been involved in today, from our fantastic speakers. I'm sure you'll all agree they've just been inspiring, really, to listen to everybody speak today. Has given us lots of ideas to go forward with. Thank you for everybody who's come in and out during the day to listen to the event, and to our volunteers who've been supporting us in the background as well. Thank you, Sarah and Matt, my fellow trustees, who are always fabulous and work incredibly hard. And I'm just going to leave you with this link here, because Sarah would probably, I can't because I'm not the host. Who's the host? I was going to share you our donating link. We'll put it on the website. As I've said throughout the day, we're a really small charity. We really do, Sarah has made me host now. We do rely on the support, really, of our volunteers and our supporters. So please, if you can, donate or consider fundraising for the charity. And all the rest of the information that we've shared today is up on our website, including our newly launched today After NICU report. And with that, I will say thank you and leave you all. One final important thing, actually, to go away and look after yourselves, I think, this afternoon. I'm not sure about others who've been listening, particularly parents. It can be quite emotional day, World Prematurity Day, and listening to people's stories. So please do take a little bit of time this afternoon or this evening to look after yourselves. But thank you very much.